Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our fifth and final module for the School for Change Agents 2017. It's gone so quickly. My name's Helen Bevan, and I'll be leading this afternoon's session. And welcome to all of you. So whether you're taking part with us live today or you're watching this at some forward date, everybody is welcome, and what an incredible, broad, amazing group of people we've had taking part in the School for Change Agents this year. And this may be our final module, but it's not over. So, just to say, please keep joining in the way that you have been so far, and keeping our school tradition going. So I don't think anybody needs any encouragement anymore to use the chat box to keep contributing during the web seminar, but I know how much everybody gets in terms of value from the content that the school community puts into the chat box. Those of you that are good at multitasking, we'd love you to keep tweeting using the hashtag S4CA, School for Change Agents. And we like you using our handle, and we like you following us, which is abbreviation of school, SCH4 Change. And what we'd love you to do is also to join our Facebook group. And I think, particularly now that the formal sessions of the School for Change Agents are stopping. So all you need to do is to log into Facebook and search for the one and only group, which is called the School for Change Agents, and click Join Group. And like I say, we would love to have you. So let's look at who we've got here with us on the team today. So my name's Helen Bevan, and I'll be leading this session, and feel incredibly well supported by the rest of the team. Pip Hardy is our lead facilitator, and supports the team of facilitators that are doing the work with the breakout rooms. Got two colleagues looking after Twitter with us today, Lee and Lewis, and we have so much chat room traffic and rich content that we actually have three chat room monitors, Kate, Catherine and Ollie. And then the people behind the scenes that really make this school happen are Joe and Paul. So that's our team today. And each of these 5 weeks we've looked at different change agent capabilities. So in the first week, we looked at change beginning with me and what that meant. Week 2, we moved on from me to we, around the we of connections and building communities. In week 3, we talked about rolling with resistance and a different perspective on resistance. Last week, the focus was on making change happen, and particularly around factors of motivation for change, so that people are pulling change rather than having to push it. And what we've got today is a concluding session, and we're calling it, moving beyond the edge. So as change agents, the most effective place for us to operate is at the edge of organisations and systems. So we've been on the edge as part of being at the school, but what happens after today? How do we move beyond the edge? So before we get going, I just want to update you on what is happening with regard to certification and continuing professional development. And the News from Joe newsletter that's coming out tomorrow, Friday, it will have a lot more detail. But basically, everyone who can apply to become a certificated change agent. All you need to do is watch all 5 of the talks, any combination of live or recorded. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make available a little form that we want you to fill in. And what that will enable you to do is to apply to become a certificated change agent. I'm just going to show you the form now, because I want you to see, how easy this is. This is the front side of it, and this is the back side of it. And basically, there's just a set of questions that we want you to answer, and then we've got a little certification committee, because what we have to do is just to make sure that everybody that applies is able to demonstrate appropriately that they've taken the learning from the School for Change Agents and have applied it. But it's a pretty straightforward process. So, if you're a nurse, a midwife, or an allied health professional, you can use the school experience as part of your reflective account for revalidation for continuing professional development. And what we want to say is, instead of having to fill the form in as well, you can actually use your reflective account as the evidence for your change agent certification. So all we need you to do is to send that in. Again, we'll explain that to you in the information tomorrow. But basically, you don't have to do two things. You don't have to do a reflective account and fill in the certification form. You just need to provide us with your with the evidence from your reflective account. And then medical colleagues who when it comes to CPD points, and also other professional bodies, and I know there's people from a number of different professional organisations that this will apply for. We've asked for 15 hours of CPD for people that do all 5 sessions of the school and follow it up. And we've got a specific CPD form which we can email to you so that you can get those 15 hours of CPD. And again, we will explain that tomorrow. So hopefully lots of you will will want to get some form of certification or CPD as a result of taking part in the school, and we really want that as well. Just to say that we're running a couple of virtual clinics around certification. These are completely optional. You can choose to take part in these or watch them, or you can choose to not do that and just fill the form in. You don't need to do the clinic in order to fill the form in. You can just do that. So we've got 2 sessions. We've got one on the 23rd of March and one on the 31st of March, and they'll just be question and answer sessions. And everybody is welcome to those. And if you're going to submit your certification application to us, you need to do it by the 1st of May. And the other thing that we really want to encourage you to do is to take part in our yearbook. So we're going to pull a yearbook together, and hopefully lots and lots of the people that have taken part in the special thing that is the School for Change Agents will want to be in the yearbook. And again, just watch out, there'll be more information on how to do that. It's a pretty straightforward process, and you'll be remembered forever in the yearbook. And very final thing to say is, loads of you have been taking part in randomised coffee trials with other people from the School for Change Agents from all over Britain, all over the world, and having a fantastic time. And if you haven't done it yet, there's still time. And again, we'll put more details of that in the newsletter, but basically you just email us and we will match you to have a cup of coffee with somebody else who is a change agent. Right, that's all the notices. So let's get going. So what we thought is, as we're now, we're approaching the edge, the end of our formal time together for the School for Change Agents 2017. We thought, let's see how you're feeling. So shortly I'm going to release the pens, and what I want you to do is to either put an arrow or a blob. Which of these 4 boxes applies to you? So, if you're absolutely raring to go, I'm ready to be radical, go out there and change the world, put your mark in the top left-hand box. If you're cautiously optimistic and you think, yeah, I think something will happen, top right-hand box. If you're feeling, pretty positive and let's see how I can make this work, it's the bottom right-hand block. And if you're still skeptical and not sure, then put your mark in the bottom left-hand box. So, and again, just before I say to Joe to release the pens, if you go on the left-hand side of your screen and you can see arrows and you can see pens along the top bar, just use those to make your mark. So Joe, can we release the pens? Yeah, they're working. Great. So how are you feeling? Okay, what we can see from that is the box that has got the most marks on is the one about, I'm feeling pretty optimistic, and closely followed by the box which says I'm ready to be radical. Do you know, I don't think we've got a single skeptic taking part in this webinar. So thank you for doing that. So Joe, can we take the pens back? And let's get going. So what are we going to cover in the next 50 minutes? So how do we move forward, moving beyond the edge, which is the school of the change agent, and how can we make the best of the ongoing opportunities that are available for us to support and to stay connected. And when we think about that future change agenda and the opportunities that might lie ahead, how can we seize them? Well, I want to say some more about the direction of things, change methods. How can we make our future change story a reality? And thinking about the things that we need to do to gain certification as a change agent. So, what this slide basically says is that what we're going to get in Module 5 today is an interesting combination of some stuff that we've done before as reinforcement and some new content as well. And I took this here from Caseborn because I mean, what this research basically says is that if we want to retain learning, particularly after a very short space of time, it's very helpful to reinforce that learning. So what we've tried to do today is to bring back, some of the concepts that we've talked about before, but weave them into a kind of bigger picture of being a change agent. So, School for Change Agents, we talk a lot about being on the edge, okay? And why are we on the edge, okay? The edge is the place where we have like 1 foot inside our organisation system and 1 foot outside. So we're making the most, okay, of being an organisational member and a corporate citizen inside our organisation. But we've also got fantastic connections with people beyond the boundaries, of our immediate team or our immediate organisation. Because as Eilert Barron says, the edge is the place to be. Those who want to challenge, who want to make change happen, the edge is the place where they're able to unite, share, support and grow together as change activists. And we hope that a lot of the connections and relationships that you've been making as part of the School for Change Agents, will continue, and that you'll stay out there on the edge. And we hope, that by joining the School for Change Agents, it's helped to position you to do that. So let's talk a little bit about, one of the topics that we talked about in Module 3 was about, why is organisational and system change so hard, and why does it make our job or our mission as change agents so difficult? And there's lots of different evidence bases to pick, and I picked this one. Actually, this is a really interesting, useful document by the team from the Deloitte Review. And we keep saying the same things, but what happens is that many change management programs start from the point that people start in change with a common interest. Okay, that there isn't any previous history, and people come from a neutral place. And the reality is that power dynamics, the specific unique things that are happening in this context, which mean that things can't just be replicated, the factors that lead to resistance to change, what we're seeing is these factors are consistently underestimated, and they're not even considered to be important factors. because, you know, at the heart of organisational change, it's changing mindsets and it's changing behaviour. And actually, there's very, very little evidence that says that you know, we can implement some rational change programme and that people's behaviour is pliable or predictable to enable this change to happen. And again, you know, what we've tried to do in the School for Change Agent is to focus in on some of these really key factors for change. So that the kind of the curriculum, the ideas and the principles of the School for Change Agents, they sit alongside many of the fantastic technical quality improvement, you know, design and other kinds of methods. And you know, we're seeking to make to enable change to happen in this very messy, complex world. And one of the models that we looked at in the very first week of the School for Change Agents is the Peter Fuda Transformational Change Agent Framework. And what Peter Fuda did was identify what are the factors that differentiate somebody who is a transformational change agent from somebody who's a more you know, pragmatic change agent. And what he talked about was thinking about being a change agent at 3 different levels. So the first one was about doing change, and it's about, you know, having the skills and the methodology for making change happen. The second aspect was seeing, which is about, you know, being able to stand back and see the world in a different way, see possibilities, see opportunities, stand in the shoes of other people, see things in a different light. And the final aspect was about being change. And here, you know, it's like in terms of every action I take, in terms of all the things I talk about, I'm a role model first, constantly role modeling the change I want to see in the world, and a preacher that tells people what to do second. And again, a big focus in terms of the School for Change Agents has been focusing on seeing and being change to support the very important work of doing change. And this quote here comes from Otto Scharmer, and you know, he says, the success of our actions as change makers does not depend on what we do or how we do it, but on the inner place from which we operate. And you know, this whole idea that, you know, in module 1, you know, change starts with me, and how, you know, I connect who I am in the world and my values and the things that matter to me to the things that I do. And just to show you how important this is, and this is some research that was carried out by Towers Watson, and what they showed us is, in terms of, you know, people taking signals, okay, you know, other people in our teams or people that we want to be part of our change process, actually our behaviour as leaders and role models results in about 65% of the action that people take in. So last week we talked about, you know, being signal generators, and you know, just want to kind of reinforce this with this other study, that, you know, we can say we've got to do the change, but if our behaviour doesn't change, then you know, people can see that absolutely straight away. So, you know, talking about, you know, being on the edge and moving forward, I think that, you know, one of the conclusions that we have to come to is that actually the next phase of change will be much more like a social movement. And, you know, some of the opportunities for us as change agents is around developing skills in this way. And I wanted to use this framework that Greg Sattel set out to you know, to think about how we move from the edge, how we equip ourselves with the kind of change skills for moving into the future. And what Greg Sattel did was to look at, okay, successful social movements. So the social movements that were, you know, really able to deliver big change. What were the specific things that they did? And so what I thought I'd do is I'd use some of the content we've already had in the school and some new content as well to think through these new factors. Because as we leave the school today, I think that, you know, these are pretty good principles to work with. So let's start with the first one. Define the change that you want to see. And what we saw in module number 2, Catherine took us through, I think, some really important content about stories and how, if we want to, create a picture of how the future can be, then stories are one of the most powerful ways of doing that. They're an emotional resource that help us to meet, uncertainty. And by telling stories, we turn our experiences into a resource that helps us inspire, connect, and organise with others. And I think if there's one thing that we take away from the school, it's the importance of storytelling. And one of the things that Catherine talked about in this context in module number 2, From Me to We, was this principle which comes from Martin Luther King Jr., which she talked about, the fierce urgency of now. This whole idea that, bad things, difficult things are happening in our system, and, we have to take action now. And I think it's really important, one aspect of this, the urgency of now, is there's almost kind of two aspects of it in the way that Martin Luther King described it. He talked about, we must act with alacrity, and what we mean by alacrity, we must take urgent action now. So we must move speedily, we must move, swiftly with energy, and at the same time, not just kind of crashing into action, but also really thinking about it. Thinking about the thoughtfulness, the seriousness of purpose. Okay, really getting organised and planned. So we need to move with a sense of urgency, and we need to do things really well. And I think that's great advice for us as change agents. We need to be doing both. I'm going to just at the end of this next section, I'm just going to give warning to our Twitter monitors and our chat monitors that we'll see how we're doing. Okay. Second thing that Greg Sattel says makes a big difference when it comes to building a successful social movement is the need to build a spectrum of allies. And what we mean by this is, in terms of the people that we engage in change, it just can't be people like us. Actually, if we look at the successful social movements, what they did very, very well was to engage, a really broad spectrum of people. So, for instance, we were talking there about Martin Luther King Jr. The American Civil Rights Movement didn't just, mobilize people who were, dispossessed African Americans in the South and in the southern states of the USA. Okay, they were able to mobilize a very, very broad coalition of people, particularly people from the powerful professional classes on the East Coast. And we have to do the same. We have to think about how can we build a spectrum of allies. One of the other slides that Catherine used in module number 2 was this research from Canadian researchers Batalan and Casciaro called The Network Secrets of Great Change Agents. And what this showed was that actually when it comes to being an effective change agent, it's very little to do with positional power. The most effective change agents aren't the people necessarily with the most power. Actually, what's more important when it comes to being an effective change agent is the extent to which I'm central in informal hierarchies. And particularly in this context of thinking, how do I build a spectrum of allies? I think the second part of this research is particularly important, because what they found is if you want to create small-scale incremental change, then work through what they call a cohesive network. And what we mean by a cohesive network is, a small, tight network of people like me. But if we're ambitious to create really big change, then what we've got to be able to do is create what they call bridge networks between groups that aren't currently connected. And I think this is the choice that all of us have as change agents. How big scale change do we want to do? Do we want to create? And do we want to focus on our own small, tight network, or if we want to do bigger change, we've got to connect people who aren't currently connected. And I think, in this context, it's very, very helpful to look at some ideas from network theory, from social network theory, around strong ties and weak ties, because I think that we, as as change agents, we've got to be able to work with both our strong ties and our weak ties. So what do we mean by that? So let's start off by thinking about strong ties. Okay, when we're connecting and we're spreading change through our strong ties, we're interacting with other people who are like us, people who've got the same, maybe the same life experiences, the same education, the same beliefs and values. So when change happens through strong ties, it's peer-to-peer. It's GP to GP, police officer to police officer, social worker to social worker, nurse to nurse, community leader to community leader, and so on. And when we work through our strong ties, our influence gets spread because it's people who are strongly connected to each other, who like and trust each other. And honestly, the first 20 years of my career as a change agent, I worked almost exclusively through strong ties. And, I can remember when in my early days as a change agent in the NHS, what I got told was, because I don't have a clinical background, I wouldn't be able to influence GPs. So I needed to find a GP who gets it and use them as the kind of conduit or the bridge to other GPs. And I think so much change thinking in the health and care system is built on this. And the thing about strong ties, there are lots of advantages with them. They work because people are far more likely to be influenced to adopt new behaviours or new ways of working from people that they are most strongly tied with. Okay, and the biggest issue here is trust. I'm much more likely to be influenced by somebody that I trust than somebody that I don't trust. So let's have a little bit of interaction in the chat box. So what I'd like us to do first is to say, when it comes to working in strong ties ways, what are the advantages? Okay. Why should we be working through strong ties? And then we'll do a second exercise, which is, why, what are the cons, what are the drawbacks when we're spreading change and influencing through strong ties? So if we can have our chat monitors ready, and let's start off with the pros. And I can see that we've got one already from Wendy, which is fantastic. So can you just put in the chat box, what do you think are some of the advantages of working in with strong ties and through strong ties? And in a moment, I'm going to ask our chat monitors to sum this up. So just make sure that you can hear me. So so Kate, can you hear me? And Ollie and Catherine.
Hi, yes, I can hear you. So, are you ready for some feedback?
Yeah, I'd like some feedback, definitely, yeah.
So, it's just, wow, there's loads coming through, and it's kind of like the discussions are around brings diversity, momentum, shared experience, same language, supportive, there's lots of, it's actually quite a wide range of suggestions that are coming through. There's a few quite saying that shared understandings, which is shared values, seems to be quite a strong thing that's coming through there. So I don't know if Ollie and Catherine have picked anything else additional out to those.
Well, Hazel's even given us a really fantastic quote from Margaret Wheatley as well. Anything else to add?
Ollie.
Yeah.
I think Kate's summed that up perfectly.
Yeah.
I think, as she said, a lot around sort of shared values, common understanding, and sort of pooling knowledge, and sort of trust, implicit trust,
yeah.
because you know where that person's coming from.
Okay. Very good. No, that's fantastic. So can we be as active and energetic now in identifying the drawbacks? Okay. So again, thinking back to those strong ties, what are the drawbacks or the limitations or the problems with spreading change through strong ties? These are great. Okay, I think there's enough. There's plenty to be getting on with there now. So, so Kate, Ollie, Catherine, do you want to sum up some of the ideas around cons? Oh my goodness, there's more cons than pros.
I mean, I think a lot of the sort of the cons are around the fact that everybody has, there's a lot of groupthink. There's little diversity, not being challenged, confirmation bias, and sort of bias in all thinking similar, and then sort of competitiveness, and also not reaching people who don't want to change. So actually, if you're sort of working with your strong ties, they quite often have the same value sets as you, and therefore perhaps see things your way.
Yeah. And one of our thanks Ollie, and one of the most important words that we've had in every module of the school so far has been about the central role of diversity, and around enabling change to happen, and I can see that word quite often in the lack of diversity, lack of different thinking. So that's great. So thank you, chatbot monitor. So let's then talk about weak ties. If we're going to be spreading change through weak ties, then what we have to be doing is like building bridges and between groups and individuals and communities who were previously different and separate and not connected. And so, at the heart of change, as we keep saying, is relationships. But what we have to do when we work through our weak ties is it's about relationships based not on our pre-existing, similarities or experiences, but we actually have to think about the common purpose, commitments that people make to each other to take action. And again, it goes back to the reason why stories are so important, because if we are not united by a similar experience or a similar background, we have to use stories so that we can understand the values and the purpose that we share. And if we can work through our weak ties and we can start connecting, it can bring us tremendous power, because by building bridges between our weak ties, we can mobilize all of the assets and strengths and skills and capabilities in our organization or system or community to help us achieve our goals. So, and I think this is why, as change agents, it's really important that we're building, weak ties as well as strong ties. And when Greg Sattles talks about, how we're going to build a spectrum of allies, we really need to be focusing very, very strongly on our weak ties. And the reason why is, as many of you put in the chat box when we looked at the cons of strong ties, if we work through weak ties, they're much more likely to lead us to change at scale. Because when we work with strong ties, the change might happen quickly, but it will only happen to the outer barrier of the strong tie relationships. But because we're building bridges and we're connecting, then we can access many, many more people with far fewer values. What happens is that when things are difficult and ambiguous and uncertain, then what we do is that we revert back to our strong ties. And, in many aspects of the public sector now, where, things are really tough, we can see that happening. We tend to batten down the hatches and go back to what we trust. And yet history tells us that when it comes to innovating, to searching out resources when things are very scarce, our weak ties are much, much more important, because that's where the breakthrough happens. The most breakthrough innovations and the most radical change will come when we tap into our weak ties. And part of what I hope for everybody taking part in the school is that, what the school enables us to do is absolutely to work with our strong ties, and strong ties are really important, and to work with our weak ties as well, and see all kinds of potential and possibilities. And again, there's lots of sources of weak ties. Of course, being here with us in the school for change agent is a fantastic source of weak ties, and we can just see that from what we get in the chat box. But there are so many more as well. Social media, I think, creates so many opportunities for us to link and connect. The we communities enable us to link up with a much wider group of people. Taking part in a randomized coffee trial, with a random person is a great example. The Academy of Fabulous Stuff, where we're seeing lots and lots of examples of different kinds of things, being exposed, to different ideas and different relationships. So every one of us, I think, if we're going to build our spectrum of allies, we need to be thinking about how we're working with our weak ties, how we're building bridges between groups and communities, as well as working with the strengths of our strong ties. So I'll maybe just stop there a moment and just say to our chat monitors and also our Twitter monitors, taking account of all that chat about pros and cons, what are the other themes that we're seeing at the moment? So if we start off with our chat monitors, and we have our Twitter monitors on standby.
Shall I go first?
Yes.
So it's Kate, and I'm talking about the chat early on as well. So, the first thing that I noticed on the chat room was people sharing their experience of randomised coffee trials, and I think that's really great to hear. And then we had discussion around, about what does it really mean to be at the edge, and the edge is a great place where you can meet edgy radicals, which was from Nigel. So thank you for that. I think that's great. We want to connect with edgy radicals. And then there was a lot of discussion around, the debate about, about leadership, and, about the importance of being a leader is about modelling your behaviour and being a good role model to others. And, what does it mean to be a good leader? And being a leader isn't about creating followers; it's about creating more leaders. So I thought that was great. And there was also input about, about bottom up, about creating change that flows from the ground up. So that's kind of like the early chat room, and I don't know if Ollie wants to take over and do the later chat room stuff.
I sure can. So some really interesting discussions sort of about the point you've just been covering around weak ties, and I've just lost the reference to who mentioned it, but we were talking about Trojan mice.
Yeah,
so
we love Trojan mice.
Yeah, Sai Chun Lam saying about the use of Trojan mice, who sort of go in and learn a little bit of information, and then sort of bring it back to help sort of when you're sort of building networks with weak ties. And again, sort of a lot of discussion around sort of people's personal experience of using weak ties, and sort of understanding how they work, and lots of ideas to create new weak communities.
Yeah, fantastic. I know I saw We Radicals. That's a great idea. Yeah, thanks, Kate and Ollie. So have we got Lee and Lewis? What's happening on Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter's been going mad as usual, which is fantastic to see, so much activity. For most of the day, people have been tweeting saying how sorry they are. It's the last week of school. They've really enjoyed it. So that's fantastic to see. So thank you to everybody. And the key themes from the live session so far have been about storytelling. You know, people have been saying what an undervalued resource that stories are, and how stories can connect so much. So thinking about the weak ties, how by sharing our stories we can create that shared purpose, that compelling argument for change. So people really enjoying that. So yeah, lots of good tweets. So thank you everybody who's been tweeting.
Fantastic, and do keep them coming. So you can really see, I hope, the kind of connections between being on the edge, building a spectrum of allies, working with weak ties, and again, it may be something that you might want to work on as as part of your actions from the the School for Change Agents is the ones that you want to build. So what I want to go on to now is the third part of the third component of Greg Sassel's messages around what successful social movements do. And he talks about identifying the pillars of power. And again, when you look at a lot of those very successful social movements, what they were able to do was to mobilize a lot of people in new power ways. And they were able to get politicians and institutions and senior leaders on board. So again, using the example that I've been using around the civil rights movement, the civil rights movement succeeded because it was possible to connect with the legislature and the political system, and if you like, the pillars of power of existing institutions, and we need to learn from that, and we need to do that. And many of us think our power base is a new power base. And we also need to be thinking around, some of the mechanisms of old power, and some aspects of our organisations and our formal leadership systems can potentially be, incredibly powerful. So, just in this context, this is a piece of graffiti that is on a wall in Austin, Texas, and again, another quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We may have come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. Okay, really strong, a really strong statement that has got a weak tie, has got a weak tie mentality. So, the fourth theme was seek to attract, not overpower. And I think we talked about this a lot in module number 3 when we talked about resistance to change, and also in module number 4 around making change happen. And this I took from module number 4, and we talked about intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, and we actually we need to be working with both, and we particularly need to be focusing on how we build intrinsic motivation, and really connect, engage, again using stories. And what we know is that actually when you've got people that are intrinsically motivated at work or intrinsically motivated in the community, they're very rarely poor performers. And so how we need to use the mechanisms of extrinsic motivation, and the real opportunities are intrinsic motivation at scale. We also looked at the stages of change model within module number 3. And what we're doing here is saying, let's understand what stage people are typically at. And again, if we want to attract, not overpower, we need to move away from a scenario that we see very often in public service, whereby we're planning change interventions that are at stage 4, ready for action, when the reality is that people are pre-contemplated, not even thinking about it, or contemplative starting to think about it. So actually we need to start from where people are, and we need to be attracting them, not forcing them to take action at stage 4. Then the next focus, the 5th point that Greg Settle makes, is that successful social movements build a plan to survive victory. And what he means by that, you know, often it's so hard to make a change happen, to achieve the things that we want to achieve. We kind of get there, you know, we put the changes in place and we kind of breathe a sigh of relief. But actually we declare victory too early, because we're still part of a broader system that often hasn't been changed, and it's very, very, very difficult to sustain change. So let's build in sustainability, you know, before we even start. And just a few ideas on this. The first thing that we're seeing across the world that fits in, I think, with the themes of the Schools for Change Agents is we're seeing this shift going on from change programs to change platforms. And, you know, if we want to create sustainable change, I think we need to have a shift in mindset about how we want change to happen. And let's just talk a little about this. So let's just talk a little bit about change programs to start with. You know, what we talk about is, you know, a systematic approach called change management, that we plan and predict things in very rational ways. I don't think there's anything wrong with change programs per se. It's the way that we go about them. And too often as leaders, we don't just prescribe this is the outcome of the change, but actually we prescribe the method, and it's done in a way that's very top down. So it means that people at the front line will experience this as imposed, like have to, rather than embraced, you know, want to. And what we're seeing, you know, as the kind of platform mentality, platform economy is expanding around the world, you know, we're seeing this shift towards change platforms. And what a change platform means is that we create a space, and it might be a virtual space, it might be a physical space, where everyone, you know, whether they're a service user, they're a family member, they're a member of staff, can get involved in helping to tackle the most challenging issues. And again, when we have a change platform where we seek to get everyone's views, and you know, it's again we're using weak ties, and you know we're valuing that diversity, and we're connecting people, ideas, and learning. And actually, in an era of change platforms, the role of formal leaders is actually much harder, because it's about how do we create the conditions and get everyone involved, and how do we then, you know, get out of the way. But I think, you know, what we're seeing globally is, you know, as change needs to happen, you know, much more quickly. You know, we're seeing this shift towards change platforms. And you know, how do we build in the kind of conversations and the ways of connecting that you know, enable our approaches to change to be sustained? And one of the things that we're seeing in this increasingly fast-moving world is a shift from explicit knowledge to tacit knowledge. And explicit knowledge, we mean where, you know, we've analysed things, we've got a best practice database, you know, we know what works, and you know, seeking to spread the things that we know that work. Tacit knowledge is the kind of knowledge that people get by learning by doing. And you know, it's experiential. And if we can create the kinds of conversations where, you know, people can connect and share, then learning is going to happen much more quickly. So I think another big challenge for the next phase is about how do we build the kind of conversations and the kind of social relationships that that enable people to share. And I think, you know, we have a little way to go. This is some research that Mary Dixon Woods is doing. I think it's globally significant research on what happens in quality improvement programs and when they work and when they don't. And she said, you know, the reality is if you actually talk to staff, you talk to patients about what they want in change, they want more conversations for change. And the reality often for them is that top-down improvement programs, how it feels is that we're giving, people more paperwork. And you see, what evidence tells us is that if we want to spread new knowledge, the most effective way of doing that is by social connection and discussion. And Nick Milton, who's one of the leading knowledge management experts in Britain, he says social connection and discussion is 14 times more effective than written words, standards, best practice databases, or toolkits. And I say this as somebody who spent 20 years writing quality improvement toolkits for the National Health Service in England. The kind of explicit knowledge that toolkits give us, is phenomenal. The way we're able to distill what works best. But often toolkits sit on shelves. They don't come alive. It's those social connections, those discussions, those sharing of tacit knowledge that really makes a difference. And just to say on this that this is from Steve Denning, who previously again is a globally known knowledge leader, and he said, the learning capacity of an organisation is directly related to the extent to which it can hold conversations. So I think for us as change agents, how do we create the space? How do we encourage these conversations? How do we build these week times? Enjoyed and got a lot out of the School for Change Agents, but it's given you new skills and it's given you confidence, to rock that boat and stay in it. So, I guess our final message is, there's lots of excuses and lots of reasons not to do the things we know we've got to do. But actually, let's stay connected, let's support each other, and let's get on with making happen the things that we absolutely know in our heart need to happen, and we can do it. So that's the end of Module 5. It would be really lovely if you could put some little, comments or reflections, or maybe something about your story at the end of school now, and we'll be back in touch. I hope that many of you will choose to be a certificated change agent. I hope that you'll connect up, with the yearbook. And let's keep those week ties going, because I think it's people like the people that are part of the School for Change Agents that really are leading the future, creating the future that we need, whether we're in the health and care system or in other parts of the public sector, or are people who are doing their own thing about social good. So thanks everybody, and we might see you next year.